Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. My name's Kevin Bidner. I'm the CEO of the Hotel Communication Network. I'd like to welcome you to the International Luxury Hotel Association's webinar on leveraging technology to enrich the guest experience and drive revenue, moderated by myself with panelists Judy Chen, VP of Development of the Dream Hotel Group, Tim Harvey, CEO of Core Ideas and ex-Hilton EVP and CIO, and Nelson Garrido, Senior VP IT, Brookfield Property Group, a stellar panel. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. So I'd like to briefly, first of all, introduce myself, tell you a little bit about my company, and also why we're here today. And it's really all about the guest experience and leveraging technology to improve the guest experience and revenue as well. So why don't we start with just a few seconds about myself. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Together with my co-founder, we started this company after a major success, establishing a digital platform in two major industries with a 95% market share. That company IPO'd in 2005. We left in 2010 to start this, 12 long years ago, where we saw the opportunity to establish a digital platform in arguably the world's largest industry, travel. And a digital platform transforms the way we do business in whatever industry it embeds itself in. So we had a vision of starting something, and we saw the opportunity in the guest room, kind of the last digital frontier of the hotel industry. They had done the back office, and they had never done the guest room. So lagging in technology, we saw the opportunity. We knew the millennial generation was eventually coming and that the guest room would have to be modernized with some new technology. The industry started 10 years ago. As the time that we started, they were trying to do it on the television. As we all know, that didn't work. And then maybe 5-6 years ago, switched over to trying to do it with mobile apps. So valiant effort, a lot of money was spent, still never got over 10% as an industry, an average of 10% of the guests downloading a mobile app while traveling, hotel's mobile app while traveling. So what do you do with the other 95% of your guests? And with the millennial generation now at the shores of the industry as their largest customer set, those millennials are now in their 40s. What do you do with a landline and a paper-based directory in the room? These are not the favorite modes of communication of that upcoming generation. The industry was really forced to rethink, retool, and try and digitize. Then came COVID, which is a major catalyst that will up the requirement for investment in guest room technology. That brings us to now, coming out of COVID, as we all see the end of this horrendous problem in the at least near-term horizon coming in 22, 23, things will start to stabilize and go back to normal. The industry's got to try and crawl itself out of a terrible situation where there's not enough revenue, you're trying to attract guests, and not enough staff and hard to rehire staff. And so how does technology help with these problems and help with the problem of increasing revenue, increasing guest satisfaction at the same time? So, our thesis, our presentation today, our discussion today is going to be about how, how the guest benefits from guest room technology. I'm going to just share my screen. So what we can see here is a tablet in the guest room and a companion digital assistant on the guest's own mobile, and the two are linked. The two are basically the same platform, and that's that is the Hotel Communication Network's guest room technology platform. And we're talking about a digital billboard in the room, which is that tablet that also controls the room. You have room controls, television controls. It will eventually replace the telephone, certainly the clock radio. It also is the most natural platform and portal for guest communication to the hotel. And certainly we're all using our mobile devices now, so it's kind of 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But people don't want to download a mobile app. So having the tablet pre-configured in the room, certainly voice activated, and a companion mobile app that doesn't need a download, that's a QR code, creates a digital in-room presence that is 24/7 pervasive. We're seeing 80, 90, 95% guest usage every day. And so that is the platform that is usable and that will be successful. And then it also does virtual concierge within the hotel and the city. And of course, it's an extra screen for internet surfing, et cetera. So it's got such a wide variety of uses. And then HCN's particular business strategy is supporting subsidizing the cost to the hotel through gaining other revenue streams, food delivery, advertising, et cetera, that drop the cost to the hotelier. So all of this is, what HCN is about. And now I'd like to kind of move forward into the panel discussion where we talk about how technology at first, and then we'll specialize in guest-facing technology, can A, increase revenue, B, increase guest satisfaction, and mitigate guest dissatisfaction when services aren't quite what they used to be prior to the pandemic. So thank you, and let's move forward into the presentation. Well, it is such a privilege to have such spectacular industry luminaries joining me on this webinar. And I'd like to start the process today by asking each of you to just give a quick intro to yourself, maybe starting with Judy.
Hi guys, my name is Judy Chen. Thanks for having me today. I am the VP of Development for Dream Hotel Group. We are a luxury lifestyle hotel brand. My goal is to help the company grow our portfolio, both domestically and abroad.
Thanks, Judy. And Nelson.
Hi, Nelson Garrido from Brookfield. I oversee technology for Brookfield Properties on the hospitality side, and we're an owner and developer of hotels globally.
Wonderful. Thank you, Nelson. And go ahead, Tim.
Yes, well, I'm Tim Harvey, the CEO of Core Ideas, a consulting company that helps some of the larger hotel companies. My background was I started and worked for half of my career with large hotel companies like Hilton and Holiday Inn. And so decided to start trying to advise some of these larger companies on some of the things that we learned. So very, very nice to be here today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks, Tim. And maybe I'll ask you to lead off with just the very first question today. How important is technology for the industry's recovery, do you think?
Well, initially, I think the industry's pretty worried about getting people to come back into our industry. They've defected for various reasons, whether higher pay or safety. And I think a lot of companies today, technology is not on the forefront of what they're thinking about immediately today. However, I do think that technology will play an important role in helping our industry recover across a wide array of business processes, from how we price and sell to how we deliver customer services. As recovery will not be linear, technology will also help companies achieve agility in their responses to changing market conditions, deploying products and service rapidly, allowing for the occasional, last fail again. But anyway, it's just a way to innovate and get out and try things as we recover through technology. In talking to executives, I clearly hear them saying that they're accelerating technology and investment starting in 2022, primarily to combat labor shortages, for improving team member productivity and enabling guest services, not only to address the labor challenges, but also recognizing the need for enhanced safety, health, and security programs. Technology initiatives can also improve operating margins. So that's another area of focus through digitalization of those operational processes. And finally, I think they tell me investing in revenue optimization as they try to capture larger shares of existing demand and identify new emerging segments. Now, a lot of those things that I mentioned have always been a focus in the industry, but I do think COVID has served as a catalyst to accelerate and encourage business leaders to look for ways to work smarter and transform how they do business. Labor has always been a problem for us, but you know, it has always been a focus, and a move towards self-service has always been on the list. But COVID has just brought that to light, particularly with, you know, safety and, you know, security kinds of reasons. But in closing here, I would emphasize that our business is a people business, and the recovery will be led by our team members. Hotel companies will make their top priority of technology investment to simplify guest service, which is very complex today and requires many different technology platforms and business processes. But we've got to find ways to make our team members more productive and continue to delight our guests.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. That was a great answer. And Judy or Nelson, anything to contribute on that subject, maybe starting with Judy?
Yeah, you know, on the lifestyle space, you know, primarily while I'm on the deal side, I am very close with all their operations teams and seeing how we can continue to drive revenue in these times. You know, a lot of what we do is touch point and guest relations. So tech has been really helpful in helping us kind of take the things that originally were not as in the forefront, that do not affect customer experience as much, to be able to help save costs and also find ways to drive revenue, which are the two most important things that we have to do at this time. Additionally, kind of a side note, a lot of the technology that we implement may not even necessarily be either of those two. In these times when we're all scrambling to get more guests, it's actually quite helpful to have additional touch points, whether it's something like, you know, unique content available on our guest TVs for guests to work out. That are the little things that will ensure or continued guest satisfaction. And if that's what it will take to get someone to stay at my property over theirs, that's an added bonus as well. So I think there are very different creative ways in which we can utilize tech in these times to help with to help increase the bottom line.
That's great. Nelson, do you want to weigh in on this?
Sure. We've been pushing a lot of the contactless and remote using your own device technologies into the guest rooms to what, you know, guests have been used to doing it at their own homes. And
that contactless, is that using hotel apps that you've encouraged your properties to bring on board, or? So in our branded hotels, most of our brand partners all have apps. You know, Hilton, Hyatt, Marriott, they all have apps, so they've leveraged those. And our independents, we've actually did a pilot in a bunch of our independents where we've deployed an app in some hotels, and we went appless, where it's just a web-based either ordering or web-based, so you don't have to install an app on your own device to see, you know, what really guests like to do. I mean, I think everyone's gotten pretty too many apps on their phones. They want to have less apps. Are you finding the appless entry a better interface? That more guests are taking that up? Don't have yet. Unfortunately, don't have enough data yet because we haven't had the occupancy surges that we've hoped for. But hopefully, we'll get some more of that data. Definitely on the food ordering side, as most of us have seen and gone to restaurants, what we thought in 2019 the QR code to be dead somehow survived and flourished, and now there's QR codes for everything. The resurgence so I think of that technology, it's been big over in Europe and Asia. Yep. Lagging here, and I think that's a big boost for that technology to be adopted here, which is great because it gives the hotelier a new kind of avenue to reach the guest where apps didn't work. Hopefully this will grab. And you can save, hotels can save money on not printing menus all the time and keeping menus fresh, you know, up to, you know, if something's not in stock, which is kind of typical nowadays, that menu can be updated very quickly with, you know, just a
keystroke versus having to go and reprint menus.
Sure. Well, that's the whole thing about having a digital platform in the rooms. And
Absolutely.
how are you finding the food ordering over a digital platform? Is that satisfying guest requirements?
We've deployed them more on the takeout side, where it's the grab and go type of locations. They've liked them. There are still guests that still want to talk to somebody and order it at a counter. So in our luxury hotels, it's we have both. So it's, our philosophy is kind of, you have the choice. Do you want to order it contactless and go pick it up, or do you want to actually order it with the person?
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. We're at my company using our tablets for food ordering, just like Uber Eats.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Using that revenue to pay for the tablets so we can give it to the hotels at a lower cost, and finding that really having food delivered up to the room, like room service, is kind of the next stage. A lot of the mid-range 4 stars are not bringing room service back. I don't know if that's what you guys are planning.
No, we've on our luxury side, room service is back. That's in an avenue that's easily serviced versus in dining room dining.
Yeah.
We actually had deployed tablets in guest rooms in a hotel in Boston pre-pandemic for room service ordering because it was a big transient hotel, so they had a lot of room service orders, and it was just too much for phone orders. So we deployed tablets in the rooms for that purpose, which came in handy during the pandemic. But we were already doing that pre-pandemic back in 17 and 18. We deployed those.
You guys were visionary. All right. Well, why don't we move on to the next question, which is the various categories of technology that will help the industry recover. And maybe Judy, with your bird's eye view, you can talk about the different types of technology that are going to help the industry recover.
Yeah, I think we have seen a lot of new technology in both back of house and front of house. So I think, we've talked about a lot over these past few months with everyone on different panels about technology, with the contactless check-in and the mobile apps and everything. But, I think at the end of the day, it's finding the right solution for things that continue to support what your brand represents. One of the funny stories I like to share, Nelson and I were on a previous panel before, and I said one of the most popular items for Dream, specifically as an example in Hollywood, has been Alfred, our robot butler. And he, is dressed in a tuxedo, speaks with a British accent, and he can do everything from deliver amenities to your room to entertaining people in the lobby by telling jokes. So while that, in essence takes away from part of the experience of, not having people to do those tasks day to day, it has added a great touch for us in terms of press mentions and Instagram stories where people say, who have never seen this before, it has been a welcome bonus to their stay with us. And I think I can't speak for other brands, but from a lifestyle perspective, it's also what we do programming wise and storytelling wise, whether it's tech enabled or not, to really facilitate that and get guests to talk about our brand and come back. While this is not strictly tech related, Dream Hollywood also opened its first NFT art exhibit. So it's incorporating tech, but not necessarily in the sense that it's directly operational, but it does allow us to attract a lot more interest in the property, brand awareness, and people to come into our lobby to see the art exhibit. And those are the things that enable us to continue driving guests into our doors. If that means staying an extra hour for a drink, that is all going to our bottom line. And I think from a lifestyle perspective at this point, when you are a very social brand, it's really important to utilize all the resources that we can to continue driving, the people to come, to continue creating that energy.
Wow, that's so interesting. It sounds like you really use technology to create a competitive differentiation.
Correct.
In terms of the profile of the hotel. Tim, tell me, your perspective on the various categories of technology that will drive recovery.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I think it's broad. There's lots of areas that I think people will get creative in. Labor productivity enhancements, I think, is one area where you're going to see. I think services are going to become more demand related, and you've got to have more of a direct interaction between the services people and the guest. With what I've seen with, housekeeping services in some of these brands, I need fresh towels. Please just come and empty my trash can. I can make up my own bed, but just, please, come and empty my trash can. So I think there's going to have to be a dynamic that basically puts hotels in a situation where you can make a request and then they can kind of schedule when they can get to it to better manage labor management. I don't know what the rest of the panel thinks about, but in that labor productivity area, just really interested in what's going to happen with the gig economy and how that might help, the industry. So gig economy is where independent contractors and short-term workers provide contracted services, to the hotels. And and how will that evolve, and what could it do to our operating structures? Could we change costs from being more fixed to more variable by using outside labor? Obviously, can we control, the delivery well enough? But, I see those kinds of enhancements to help us on the labor side. We've talked a little bit about guest self-service. I think that's a category, and, it just is probably has always been a strategic delivery channel. How do I, do a mobile check-in? How do I get my key, go directly to the room? There's a certain segment of customers that prepare that. But I think COVID has kind of introduced this whole safety security issue. So category guest services, I think you're going to see a lot of investment. Transactional efficiency, I mentioned that earlier, but a lot of these, with inflation, a lot of the cost in the infrastructure of hotels, reservations, revenue management, loyalty, those are all very expensive systems. And in today's world, I think companies, what I'm seeing, are beginning to question, should I, do less of it myself, rely more on a vendor? How do I create the connection with my brand in service delivery by maybe focusing on, the top layer, and then, use others for all of the other parts of the transactional system. Revenue management is another category, I think, that needs a lot of work. I mean, traditionally we've thought about business travel, and what we're seeing is the big company business travel is not there. It's really the small company that are a small business that's traveling more. We've obviously talked about leisure, and I think some of the revenue optimization tools that have been out there and used are going to be reevaluated, because they've got to gather the data so they can identify these emerging sources of new revenue. So I just see technology and its application being a really broad span across many business processes of the hotel. Again, always been important, but COVID, I think, is bringing a renewed focus on that kind of stuff.
Oh, thanks, Tim. That was really illuminating. And Nelson, do you have anything to add?
In terms of the categories, for looking at what makes the purchase easier for the guests, right? So for us, we're looking at there's the whole pay at the table, which we're very behind the times compared to Europe, for example. But I think we've kind of pushed our managers to say, okay, let's not look at pay at the table. Let's say look at pay from your own device. So let people pay with their own device versus having to get a credit card, receipt and bring the credit card terminal to the table if they're being serviced. How do you do that right from your phone? So you don't have to, make the purchase as easy as possible. Make it as easy as possible. They'll also buy more. Same thing with on the reservation side. How do we enhance the reservation process that they can do more add-ons, right? Add a spa visit, add some more golf rounds, what have you, all within that purchase of the reservation. Because that's when they're, because guests, I think, are looking more for experiences during their travel. So how do you enhance those and then make some more profit off of it?
Wow, that's so interesting that the three of you have had such three interestingly different responses, from Judy using technology to attract guests, Tim looking more at the underbelly and saying, how do we optimize that service delivery? How do we get the guest to be able to self-serve order it? How do we outsource not only services and staffing, but also technology? And then Nelson, on to you saying, okay, how do we make that a more seamless process for the guests to spend their money with us? And how do we capture some of that? That's a really wide ranging. I appreciate that. You really covered all the bases, I think. I think from this point forward, we're going to kind of move forward into a little bit more guest room technology focus for the rest of the panel discussion. I'm actually going to combine question 3 and 4 into one because I think it kind of all does roll together. So how can guest-facing technologies eliminate touch points, number one, improve communication, and elevate or enable guest services? So that's either elevate guest services through better communication, or enable the guest to better utilize guest services. And then finally, how is it going to drive profit? How does guest-facing technology, being mobile app, QR code app, tablet in the guest room? And Nelson, I think you've got some really interesting experience in terms of your, actually putting to use all these technologies that are in the guest room. You have the tablet, you've deployed a mobile app, you've deployed a QR code. So I'd love your perspective on, how that plays into driving a happier guest, driving more profit to the hotel, and possibly optimizing your service delivery.
Well, from the tablet perspective, it's instant gratification, right? The guest is not calling and waiting for someone to pick up the phone to then put their order in. They can do that right there on the tablet. We did have an uptick on the average check that went from a room service perspective at our particular hotel. It kind of plateaued at some point, and then COVID hit, and that's a different story. But it's that you can do the suggested selling right there on the tablet. You can suggest wines. You can suggest all sorts of things while they're doing that ordering, and make it easy. Again, it's making it easy for the guest to order, right? And then guest controls too, the same thing. We have in some hotels where you can control, the TV with your phone, so you don't have to use the remote that's in the room, and just make it a lot easier. And it's a lot more intuitive to do other orderings that are available on the TV system. And the QR code ordering and the mobile app ordering is just, again, making it as easy as possible for the guest to transact. I think another piece that we haven't implemented, but we're looking at is, for those that don't, we still have to cater to guests that may not have a smartphone, that may not want to use a tablet in the guest room. They still want to pick up the phone and call for these services. Is how can AI play a role in there? Right, in terms of taking those simple day in, day out requests for more towels, for more, or even room service orders from an AI perspective. Not only does that help get the guest what they want when they want it, but also help in the staffing side, where we don't have, the operators don't have enough staff to answer the phones. So I think that's the next big thing we're looking at, is how can AI play a role in all of this as well.
So Nelson, thank you. That was really that was excellent, and it sounds like you've got increased profitability through orders, better communication through guest self-fulfillment. In some cases, self-serve in the room in terms of the utilization of room controls like TV remotes, etc. So really a wide range of services. can I just ask you, do you think it makes for a happier
We hope so.
guest? And are they more likely to use? Yeah. Well, what's your hunch on that? You know, is it improving the guest experience?
I think for those that want to use the technology, absolutely. You know, it gets them what they want when they want it. But we also, you know, especially in the luxury segment, you do have to provide both you know, the analog and the digital side, because there are still guests that don't want to use all that technology or are intimidated by it.
And Tim, give me your perspective of guest technology in terms of the, you know, the value to the guest and the enterprise along the lines of profitability and, you know, better control over the processes in the hotel.
Right. You know, I definitely think that, you know, better ways to engage directly with the guest and giving them choices and control is going to lead to both expense management opportunities with better scheduling of things to make a limited workforce, you know, be able to be more productive. But I think it's also going to lift revenue. I believe that, you know, with what Nelson said is a perfect example, and is that when you give people opportunities to order from the room for in-room dining, you know, they decide, I'm going to take a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And before you know it, you know, you're just upselling like crazy. And so, but one of the interesting things that I see out there is a lot of loyalty programs. Wouldn't it be neat if we could use the technology where while a guest is actually in the hotel, they could earn points that they could burn right then, as opposed to just accumulating a bunch of stays for another hotel stay at a more luxurious or destination, a resort type property, that I'm able to use it for room service. I'm able to use it for other things that I might want to buy. And I think this in-room technology, you know, again, integrated with a lot of the back end stuff, but when you know they're earning certain points and you already know how many they have, why wouldn't this technology create revenue opportunities by opening them up and let them use them real time while they're there?
Yeah. Are any of the majors doing that now?
No.
I would say a few are talking about it, but yep. I agree, not to my knowledge, but there's some that are further along in talking about it.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. That was a great answer. And Judy, tell us a little bit about what you think in terms of the, you know, the scope of technology in the guest room and what'll be most useful.
Well, I think in terms of usefulness, you know, kind of to piggyback earlier off of what Nelson was saying, and we're talking about guest satisfaction, I truly believe that we are able to utilize technology to the extent that it really gets the best of both worlds. You know, I don't like being put on hold. I don't like waiting in lines. And so when there are great substitutions, it doesn't take away from my experience. In fact, it enhances it. You know, secondly, we're talking about the upsell. And I think if someone knows that I'm coming back after, you know, a night of, you know, wine, they're like, oh, what about, would you like something to eat? Or I think there are very many creative ways where we can utilize technology to, you know, not just do upsells, but really hone in on what our guests like, because I think this is a cumulative effect where using the app once, whether it's a hotel app or, you know, whether it's something connected to the hotel system, and they see, you know, this is your preference, this is what you like. And over time, it becomes more and more tailored to knowing what it is that, you know, that would get you to spend more money. And I think if utilized properly, you know, there are many great advantages to technology that can kind of help, you know, remove the things that people don't necessarily care about day to day. I don't care if a robot or someone actually comes, dumps my trash, you know, and I think how you're strategic about it to find that fine line to really increase guest revenue and satisfaction, I think it definitely goes hand in hand.
Well, thanks. I think that, you know, hotels are under such pressure now with staffing issues to even supply the same level of services that were available to us prior to COVID. And we're seeing a difference in, mass cancellation of in-room dining across some of the major hoteliers, reduction of housekeeping. It used to be an expectation that your room would be made up every day. You'd have to call to not have it made up. Kind of that's changing. What do you think in terms of being able to give the guest more opportunity to make selections, better information? In other words, that guest communication piece that would be facilitated by technology. Do you think that it will help guests cope better and accept the changing landscape of hotel services?
It's funny. I think it's funny that you use the word accept. And I think, we think about how we've been used to traveling this whole time, and then we forget, the next generation of traveler has a very different psychographic. So, it's easy to create a new habit. It's hard to break it. So I think, over the past year, as we've all become more accustomed to apps, so I have to download another one on my phone. Yes, it's annoying, but it does become much more second nature. And then we can get used to things that we didn't before, such as, oh, it's okay if my room is not cleaned every day. That was so 2017, and we are quick to forget about things. And once we find new ways to make our lives more convenient, that it does become more second nature. I wanted to talk about a little bit about kind of the labor shortage. One of the things that I noticed when I was speaking, I do travel to a lot of our different properties just to meet with the GMs. And when I look at new deals, I take my developers to tour existing properties. One of the biggest concerns that we had with the labor shortage is because we've had to go through the temp agencies, it's very hard to keep brand standards. These people are here for a very short amount of time. And so when you're very service oriented, whether it's luxury or lifestyle or both, that you really rely on that connection. I hate to be a contrarian, but I almost prefer tech in this instance, in where we can, bypass how should I say it? I almost prefer having tech versus inconsistent service. Sorry, that was the word that I was going to. So, at what point does it make more sense to say, we want that person-to-person interaction? That's not necessarily the answer for everything either. So, I think we think like, oh, robots are going to replace everything in the future. That's not true. I mean, the touch point and the interaction will remain the same, but what are the parts that we can make our brand still feel the same, have the guests be happy, and still be able to accommodate the staff shortage and still can provide the same experience?
So just to summarize, if I understood you correctly, it's technology and better communication with the guests that will help them kind of get accustomed to the new standards and to change those old habits and expectations. Is that right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, good answer too. All right, well, we're going to go on to the last little section of our discussion today, and I'd like to ask Tim to lead off with, how do you think the guests feel about technology in the guest room today? Is technology meeting their needs and expectations?
Yeah, I'm afraid the answer is no. From my perspective, anyway. I think individual hotels, do it better than others, but I think broadly across the industry, I really see 4 things that have, got to get better. But these solutions that we create, are very siloed, and at some point, they ultimately get into other pieces of software provided by others. For instance, if you want to watch your, local content, your streaming service in the hotel, invariably, you've got to go into their sites to do some things. And, and how does that really link back together with, what overall packaging, the hotel was trying to create. So it makes for a complicated solution. And I think we've got to continue to work more on ease of use. I don't, we've got to do things more consistently in more hotels. I think some of these companies that have a large portfolio of hotels are going to have to say it's important to get it in all the hotels to be able to start bringing it into what you're promising the guest, an experience. And so it's got to be in each place, but sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not there. Very difficult to train the guest and to try to make it, a core part of the brand. And solutions are just not integrated. The point of sale and the property management system, for billing purposes, in seamless, delivery for the guest. It just doesn't exist. I mean, it needs to evolve, where all of these systems really work together, and the experience that you give the guests from the room has to reflect an integrated, holistic experience. And then I also think the fourth one is that I don't think our applications today are broad enough. I think there's a lot of digital services that are lagging. It's great to hear your panel say about in-room dining. I've talked about points burn, earn and burn points. We've got to continue to take these base platforms and continue to, evolve them to cover a broader breadth of the services, the total amount of services that the guest needs. So it's still complex. We need to simplify. It's not everywhere. It's not as integrated as we need it to be. And then I think it's needs to be, more robust. So, we've got to take, that holistic view, and we've got to say that this is a strategic delivery point, and we've got to make it, the right solution, for our guests. So I like some of the things I'm seeing there. I don't mean to say that, but it's not as comprehensive and everywhere as it needs to be.
Well, thanks, Tim. It sounds to me like you're obviously you're a big believer in technology and innovation. And it sounds to me like the industry's at that point in terms of guest-facing technology where it's just, we're still innovating and we're still implementing. It's not quite there yet. And the industry's got to invest. How do you feel the investment from the industry is going to, be achieved coming out of COVID? Obviously, there's a lot of financial pressure downwards. Do you think the industry is going to be willing to pay more for better technology?
Well, I think that I look at it a little bit differently. I think they are going to be forced to embrace technology because they can't do it all through people. As Judy was saying, the alternative to use gig economy, you can't control the service delivery the way you want to. So you're going to have to really figure out exactly what the human side works hand in hand better with the technology to create the right solution. So I think hotel companies, are going to have to, as I said, invest more sooner. I think COVID has just brought to light some real challenges in the issue and in the industry, and we're going to be repositioning ourselves for years to come. And all of these are things that we had been looking at, but COVID just shined a light on them.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tim. That was a great answer. Judy, what do you think in terms of guest, are guests happy with the technology in the room? And, what's your perspective?
I would like to think we are, but we, provide guests with things that they like and that they, are comfortable with using our app and everything. I agree with Tim that there is still room for, a lot of integration, but I think what makes us different as a brand, or just the lifestyle space in general, is our anticipation of guest needs. And so, to be able to provide services on the app that our guests may not originally thought that they had wanted, is a great addition as well. This is not totally tech related, but back at Dream Hollywood, we used to have a empty studio space downstairs that we converted to a radio station. And so we had a lot of great local artists come and do interviews, and we were able to stream that directly into our in-room TV. And so, to provide customized content to our guests that is, maybe it's not a mobile facing app, but it's just something special that we bring that people are like, oh, they were interviewing downstairs, I can see it live, or I can, hear it on in my room TV at this property and nowhere else. To give guests something that they can't get anywhere else, I think is extremely valuable. And to also anticipate what they would want. Maybe I didn't think I wanted to hear about this interview, and then I turn it on, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is really interesting. And so I think part of that anticipation and in terms of thinking what our guests would like is really important at these times, as we really need to drive guest loyalty.
Wow, that's such an interesting answer, because we all think of technology on this macro scale.
Right.
And it sounds more like you're using technology on the micro scale, adding innovation on a very personal level, on a property by property basis. How can we use technology to make ourselves different? Which is, I think, really excellent. It shows such creativity. And Nelson, to finish up, any thoughts?
I agree with Tim that we're not there. We don't have the technology the guest in all cases needs or wants in the guest room, because we're always in that battle of what they have at home. Right? They now have their gig fiber. They now have their I don't know how many streaming applications they have at home when they cut the cord. So we're always in that constant battle, and there requires a heavy investment of how do we bring that into the guest room seamlessly for the guests to use as they use at home, because we are the rooms are multi-user. They're not single user like your home is. So I think there's a lot to work on in that area.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I think that concludes this wonderful panel. You've all, contributed so much, and also differently. I really appreciate your contributions, and it's been illuminating for me, and hopefully for the people sharing in this broadcast. All right, thanks everybody.
Thank you.